my experience in New York City, like when I left and ended up there, 20 years old or whatever, that was where my story with addiction started. That's where I tried cocaine for the first time. And that's where I soon after tried heroin for the first time. And yeah, I got blown out of New York City like a total ball of suffering. You know what I mean? Like it was a really dark time. And I didn't understand. I talk about this a lot when we play. There's a specific song in the set where beforehand I try to touch on some of these topics and like what the record is about. And it's really that, like, growing up as a kid who's like, my genes are the genes of addicts. Like my parents both have the disease of addiction. It's not a rare part of other side of my family. My dad's side especially really, really hit by it. And I didn't have that dialogue. So I really didn't understand that abuse and trauma that I was experiencing as a child, that it was creating not only trauma, but it was creating this path that I was going on where I was like really just trying to be accepted by whoever would validate me. And a lot of times acceptance came from like living up to expectations more than me kind of just being like, this is who I am and this is what I have to offer, like as me. So the anxiety that I carried from all of that and like how much weight I put on that validation was like pretty crippling. So when I did heroin, especially for the first time, I was like, man, I don't care what anybody thinks all of a sudden. This is remarkable. This feels great.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that articulate, like I didn't know like that I had kind of put up this trauma blocker. I just knew that I'd been given this incredible gift. And that was 2003. And I still didn't understand that I was a true addict, that I was carrying this disease of addiction probably till like 2016.
Yeah, same here. Like when you're in it, when I first started having problems when I was 20 years old as well, and I couldn't look at myself and say like, oh, I might have untreated PTSD or I have severe anxiety or I have this or I have that. I just know, hey, if I get really drunk and do some blow, I'm going to want to go hang out with people and I'm going to feel much more comfortable doing it. And not until I was 35 did I even begin to understand the disease of addiction and everything else you're talking about.
Yeah, I thought that whatever made it easier to associate with people, because I still looked at that as like a key principle, being in the mix. And I will say this, especially about like the underground independent music scene, is it is so relationship based, and it's so about who follows you nowadays on social media and who's seen at your shows and who you kick it with backstage and all this BS. I'm not saying that I wasn't in any way affected by those expectations, but my own response to addiction was to be very like self-isolating, or to be only really around other people that like could help cater to my use. Like if there was friends that also wanted to get high, I was in that mix, but I uniquely ended up kind of just living a completely double separate life outside of music, surrounded by a lot of people that had nothing to do with music. And obviously like the criminal path and the streets that like kind of lead you forward through that being my like mainstay in my life. And then occasionally I would dip back in and create something artistically, but with really like no understanding of who was who in the scene and what was important or what was popping and who I should care about giving a fuck. You know what I mean? Like there was just like, that didn't matter to me, which was turned out to be such a blessing, because we definitely hit walls where like I know that I wasn't probably like properly accommodating of that scene, because I just didn't really care who liked us. But at the same time, I feel like what we started creating together was just like really untainted by the expectations of those same people. And I said this last night to somebody else in a band where I was like, there's so much focus put on these people in this scene, and those aren't the people who buy your records or buy any of your stuff. It's really about like who gets in line for these shows, and they don't care about any of this stuff. They don't care if you know so and so. They don't care that you're friends with anybody. They look at it all as one unified thing, but they don't really know the behind the scenes politics, and they don't care what I'm doing on Tuesday as long as I show up to play on Wednesday, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that was important. But yeah, it was a long, long path, and I got clean in late 2018, over a year and a half after my son was born, which was another really telling thing, that like being given a chance to be a father and to right some of the wrongs that I kind of had been put through by like having a dad that wasn't around, that was not enough, and that it still took like seeking internal dialogue and seeking help, you know. And when I got that help, that was really when like we as a band could not just lay a foundation but build upon it, and over time not be scared of breaking it down just due to like, you know, my own self-sabotaging ways, you know, just like being able to continuously pay my rent and exist in one place and show up to commitments and be able to do them and do and follow through with tours, and not only follow through with tours but put on a great show. You know, it just was all everything you could actually think of. It was just like all of that was being squandered in one way or another at any given time over the course of the years leading up to that.